Welcome back to the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Edwin Porras, Dr. Physical Therapy, Medical Analyst, FantasyPoints.com. Gracias por tus oídos. We've got a bloodbath as we usually do. Heading into week 3, we're going to do the week 2 injury review. Before you do that, make sure you're going to Underdog Fantasy. You go in there, you type in Injury Prone as your promo code. You're going to get a match up to $1,000. You have that option. You have another option. You can also subscribe to the free, always free, Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. And in the show notes, option 3 is, and I'm sorry, Jorge, I'm doing these out of order. Option 3 is you can buy the Injury Prone Draft Guide and Playbook. For those of you who don't know, what the playbook is a collection of data and analysis that Jorge and I put together. And it essentially is, for example, if you want to know how's Cooper Kupp going to look like after his high ankle, well, we have data dating back to 2014 about how athletes and how wide receivers tend to do after a high ankle sprain. That's all in the book. Go to the link in the show notes. You can manage your own fantasy team. Stop guessing. So let's get to it. Right off the bat, news hit right before we hit record that Tua is going to go on the IR. That's not surprising. It typically takes about a month for a generally speaking, for concussions to clear in people in general. So it's not surprising that after his, whatever it is at this point, 4th documented concussion, Tua is going to go on the IR and take a month off. We wish him the best, obviously. Another guy whose season is going to be cut extremely short. We'll start with Isiah Pacheco. What you need to know about Isiah Pacheco is that this is a more severe injury than the one that Saquon Barkley sustained in 2021 to his ankle. So he fractured his fibula. Usually there's ligament damage associated with fractures like that. I wouldn't expect Isiah Pacheco to be anywhere near startable until week 10 or 11 at best. And we still have the chance of complications. He still might not be right. It still might be an issue for him the rest of the season. He might not look quite as explosive because those injuries are pretty brutal. They're pretty brutal. They're pretty intense. But moving on to guys whose season will start a little sooner here. We'll kick off with my beloved Cooper Kupp. I would apologize if I led you astray. If he would have had a hamstring strain, I would have said, hey, on me. I tried to state the hamstring re-injury risk. It didn't happen. If you would have told me that it was another lateral ankle sprain, just a general ankle sprain that wasn't a high ankle sprain, I would have taken accountability there. Cooper Kupp got rolled up on the left side, not even the side that he's already had the tightrope on. Most wide receivers in most scenarios would have had the same type of injury. Now we have to watch to make sure he's going to actually go on the IR. They expect him to be out. That means at least 4 weeks. That means they're just going to give him time to heal. These syndesmosis injuries do take a long time to get right. I do expect Cooper Kupp to be ready to go by the time that week 5 or 6 from the date that they place him on the IR. By that time, I do expect him to be back. A little bit of a more increased risk of hamstring strains, but I'm still targeting Cooper Kupp in leagues that I can afford it. I'm going to be a little patient. I'll probably give it a week or two, make sure I get another couple of wins under my belt in some of those leagues. Otherwise, I'm going to target Cooper Kupp in most leagues. Again, if you get a collection of these guys, understand that even though there's injury risk, there's recurrence, you have to tolerate a certain amount of risk. Imagine a team where you can have 2 first-round picks or 2 second-round picks, right? Like that team is going to be a juggernaut eventually, right? If you can collect a Cooper Kupp, if you can collect a Puka Nacua, if somehow, some way you can collect a Christian McCaffrey on top of the other picks that you've already made, that you made in your draft, and you can weather the storm and maybe go 500 or split, your team's going to be a juggernaut down the road. So that's constantly the way that I'm looking to manage these injuries. But that's beside the point. Cooper Kupp on the IR, expect him to miss the 4 weeks once he's placed there. Just confirm that he actually gets there. He'll be targeting week 7 or 8. I'm looking to target Cooper Kupp still. And it's not just take lock. The next guy we're going to talk about here, Justin Jefferson, right? Justin Jefferson is in an interesting scenario. We're going to have to monitor the practice reports. What we know about Justin Jefferson specifically is, well, let's start with this quote. This is what Justin Jefferson had to say right after the game. I'm not seriously injured. So that's the main thing. So it's just all about getting to the training room, making sure my body is right for next week, and I'll be ready to go next Sunday. We don't want to take him word for word. Obviously, most athletes say that they're going to, McCaffrey said he was ready, and then the next day they placed him on the IR. So we have to really be careful with some of what these athletes say. And so even looking at the data, we know that's the case. This isn't a clean injury to analyze because they're calling it a contusion. Generally speaking, a contusion can really be 0 to 1 weeks, or it can be somewhere 3 to 4 weeks. It just depends if it's like a true bone bruise. We don't know what the case is for Justin Jefferson. We look at the injury report since 2018, right? And again, it's not the cleanest way to analyze it, because a quad or a quadriceps can also be a muscle strain. Those are totally different injuries. But when we look at wide receivers since 2018 who are on the injury report with a quad or quadriceps, the way that Justin Jefferson is, it's actually about only 44% of the time do those guys play. That tells me that they're, number one, more injured than they let on. Number two, if they do play, they're probably not 100%. Now, for season long, does that mean much of anything? No. In a 10 or 12 team league, you're going to start Justin Jefferson if he's active in week 3. However, DFS, over-unders, whatever you're placing bets, there's a decent chance, depending on the matchup that I haven't even dug into yet, there's a decent chance you can take the under on Justin Jefferson. And DFS games, I would probably fade him in cash games. Really only good for tournaments. And even then, I'd probably be a little light in my Justin Jefferson bags in week 3 until we find out for sure that he's 100% back to 100%. And if you zooming out a little bit more, even if you make this just a quote knee issue from the injury report dating back to 2018, there's still only 52% of the players that end up playing. So you have basically between a 44 to 52% chance that Justin Jefferson is going to be active in week 3. So just monitor the practice reports, make sure that you're paying attention. All of the same analysis that I just gave for Justin Jefferson applies here for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had the exact same injury essentially as Justin Jefferson, at least we assume. So same thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Make sure you're monitoring those practice reports. Last guy I want to touch on here is Deebo Samuel. I know nobody wants to hear this. I know that you don't want to hear me talk about calf injuries anymore after we predicted Christian McCaffrey would be fine. I understand. But what you have to know about these specific injuries and about injury analysis in general is that if you follow the data, more times than not, you're going to end up on the right side of variance. And so what does the data say about calf injuries? I'm going right back to the same stuff I was saying about McCaffrey. McCaffrey was an outlier, right? This was a weird situation. But what does the data say about NFL athletes and calf injuries? The average return to play is 17 to 31 days, right? It's about 2 weeks. And that's what we heard out of San Francisco. They're saying that this is going to be a, quote, 2-week injury. That's exactly what they said about Christian McCaffrey. If you remember, I initially said on Christian McCaffrey, this is about a 2-week injury. The sports med staff probably told Shanahan, hey, this will be a 2-week injury, because typically that is what it takes to get a guy back. That obviously exploded in their face, exploded in our face. But when you look at the data, typically speaking, this is a 17 to 31 day injury. So really, if you want to look at it as a 2 to 4 week injury for Deebo Samuel, they're probably just being extra cautious, given they're dropping like flies. Given that they just lost to the Vikings, they're probably just trying to keep one of their guys safe. An update in the injury-prone fantasy league, the listener league. I am once again reporting that I lost, but it's not my fault. Listen, I lost by 1.48 points. I lost to my good compadre, George, my co-host. And I got to say, I'm embarrassed. Last week, I lost by, I think it was 0.63 or 0.67 points. This week, I lost by 1.48 points. Luckily, this is a median scoring league. And if you don't have median scoring in your leagues, you should do it next year. You should add it in as soon as you can. A median score basically means that if you score at or above the median for the week of the league scoring across the board, you get a win. But if you don't, you get a loss, right? So it's possible to go 2-0, 1-1, or 0-2. And that's a really good indicator of how good your team actually performs, because it's BS if you score 80 points in a league and you get the dub and you just get the dub, right? I mean, anyway, I digress. Not happy. So basically, at this point, I think technically speaking, I think I'm 2-2. Could be 4-0 easily. I'm just tilting at this point. I hate it. I hate it. But anyway, that is it. We got it in less than 10 minutes. Make sure that you have 3 options. I'm giving you 3 options. I know I don't want to overwhelm you. You have option number 1. Go to underdogfantasy.com. Use promo code injuryprone. You're going to get up to $1,000 matched. Hit those over unders. They're really easy. They make it really easy to just tap on the screen and place your little wager there. Option number 2. You're going to subscribe to the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. Okay. There it is. Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Okay. That's option number 2. You don't have to do all 3 of these. Just do one of them. Option number 3. Go to the show notes. Tap on the injury prone draft guide and playbook. You want to know how Cooper Kupp's going to look after he comes back from his high ankle sprain? Solid. You want to know what Isiah Pacheco is going to look like when he comes back? Do you want to know what does a quarterback look like after coming back from a concussion and their fantasy scoring? Years of data dating back to like 2010 as some of this data it goes. If you want to know how to manage your fantasy team and stop guessing, make sure you get the injury prone draft guide and playbook. Other than that, gracias por tus oídos. We'll talk soon.